morning and welcome to Cover 2 Cook. We are on episode 34. We're going to recap the NFL Sunday and Monday Night Football. We're going to talk about our betting results and what news are happening in the NFL as the trade deadline comes to an end today as we're recording on Tuesday. And then what to expect coming up this week with Thursday Night Football and what college football. But before I get too far, let me bring on my co-host, Mr. Tim Cook. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. We had some good games in the NFL, really good games. We had some players making some extraordinary kind of plays and moves out there on the football field. And we had our typical Monday night Patrick Mahomes thriller.
It was. And let's get it started right off the bat. Let's start with that Broncos and Ravens game. Unfortunately, not much of a game in this one, but what do you think about that one?
Yeah, this was not good. As a Broncos fan, I think this game was over early. They just couldn't. They just couldn't get going. The second snap, he throws an interception, which didn't hurt him. It didn't hurt him at the beginning because then the Ravens, but then we got the ball back and they go for it on fourth down and they thought they had it and they reviewed it and they didn't get it. And then the Ravens, you've got to, just like we've talked in the college football, this Ravens team is that good that you have to play darn near perfect a football game, and especially as a next, he has got to play perfect football. But I felt like in the first half, the defense did not show up at all. They were not ready for this team because they just blitzed them. That Baltimore offense just blitzed them. I mean, just went right after them, and they did get it, the 10-7 late in the first quarter or in the first half. They had to throw that Philly special, which everybody claims, that's theirs. They just claim it that's theirs. And that made it 10-7. And then it wasn't even close after that. They just put it onto them. They just put it right onto them.
Yeah.
I mean, the Ravens take the ball and, Jackson, the Flowers was 20. Next thing you know, it's 24-10. It just, they couldn't get no pressure. And that defense just got lit up. There was a couple times where they were, the safeties were just running with them. They just can't. The defense looked tired, and the team was just not ready for the big time yet. I think they will get there. I think Sean Payton will have them there, but I just don't think that team is ready. And you know what? They got Kansas City next week. Oh boy, the way Kansas City played last Monday night, it's not looking good.
Yeah, I think the biggest conversation in this game is Denver's defense. I mean, don't get me wrong. Lamar Jackson's playing great this year, having more of an MVP season than he did last year after getting the MVP. And Derrick Henry is having an offensive player of the year, possibly conversations for the MVP as well. This offense for Baltimore, which just got better with getting Deontay Johnson, he didn't do as much or didn't do anything in this game, honestly, but they got more of a passing attack. But the Denver's defense just was nowhere to be found. I mean, giving up 41 points, don't get me wrong, it's a great offense by the Ravens, but I mean, you're supposed to have a great defense. And I felt that before this game started is this defense legit? Is this defense going to shut them down or even slow them down for this game? And when you get down that much, 24-10 going into half, then you got to rely on passing the ball. And unfortunately for Bo Nix, it's like he's still learning. He's still a rookie. We can't put him in this whole pedigree, but that's how the NFL is now. I mean, we've seen how many quarterbacks have got benched this year because of not giving the perfect results and giving huge games and stuff like that. We've seen Bryce Young and all these other players get benched, where in this situation, it was like if the defense just could have slowed down Baltimore. But
yeah,
I mean, it's definitely to say. I mean, Zay Flowers has 127 yards. I don't even know if he had any in the second half. I think that's what he had in the first half. But Derrick Henry has another 2-touchdown game, and Lamar has 3 passing touchdowns. It's just, now don't get me wrong, Bo Nix's catch to score that touchdown, the Philly special or whatever, was pretty good.
Yeah, I felt like that. And I thought they were still right at a 10-7 at that time. But you can't kick field goals against that, and they score touchdowns. You'll lose every time. And that's what they were doing.
Yeah, not scoring a point in the second half. I mean, I don't know if I
Yep.
I don't know if I put that all on like, oh, Bo Nix, you're not good enough. I mean, you're down, and that Ravens defense, when it's good, it's good. But is it good all the time? I mean, that's one of these situations where you got them on a good day. and they slowed you guys down a lot. So it was not a very close game at all, but I think what you're taking away from this game is Lamar and Derrick Henry. I mean, we'll kind of talk about this later in the podcast about who we think for the MVP right now, but outside of those two players, I don't really know who else you'd give it to. So,
but I agree. I agree. They were just. I mean, the defense had no answer for those guys. I mean, Jackson could throw the ball down the field to save Flowers. Really anybody, it was just like, and then Henry would just keep running. I mean, that Denver defense had no answer for that offense. None.
Yeah. Well, that moves us to our second game of the must watch. It was a very sloppy environment, but a pretty good game overall. Lions versus Packers. So for this game, with the weather conditions being what it wasn't cold enough to snow, but it was wet, it was raining, it was crazy. And then Jared Goff comes out with 2 gloves. But in this game, you saw Jared Goff almost go perfect again in the first half. It's like, I think there was a stat out today that said that like there's like 4 games where in the first half he throws perfect. I mean, in those conditions, that is very impressive. But this game you could see that Love was hurt. You could see that they have injuries throughout the team because the snaps couldn't get up, which it's one thing when you're saying the weather does it, but both teams are affected by that. And you didn't see it on the Detroit side. Detroit is playing the best ball right now. If there was a Super Bowl today, you're saying Kansas City on one side and Detroit on the other, and I'm taking Detroit all day. I know it's Pat Mahomes. I get it. But wait, Detroit's playing with defense and offense. They're just playing a full game. And that's where last year you guys were underdogs and you guys made something out of it, go to the playoffs. You're maybe one quarter away from going to the Super Bowl. And then this year you say, okay, now you have the expectations. Can you perform? But what do you think about this game?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it started out, the conditions definitely hampered. You would thought the conditions with a dome team like Detroit, it would have hampered them more than Green Bay. And I think it's the other way around. You could tell Love was hurt. That groin was, I mean, he was not. And that pick 6 at the end of the first half, that was a killer. I know he's still in that learning process, but you can't have stuff like that. And he's done it already a couple times this year. You've got to eat the ball, man. Eat the ball. Sometimes it's better to live for another day. So I thought that was a big key. I thought the key, I don't know what you thought, the Branch ejection. I think he was going after him, but I don't think it was enough to get the ejection. So yeah, I mean, that was kind of. Go ahead.
Well, I just think it's one of these things now where the game happens so fast that you're aiming for a spot, and when the guy ducks or goes lower, I don't think it was malicious. I don't think it was a dirty play at all. But it is.
I don't either. I don't think it was either.
But it is the rule, so I see why he got ejected.
Yeah. Well, they went by the letter of the law, and that's what. But even Tom Brady criticized the referees on that, which I don't know if you've seen today. He's not. That's one of the rules that he could, since he's a minority owner, and he cannot talk about the referees like he did, which they said today. Which I knew this was going to happen, because God forbid Tom Brady would ever, they would ever go after him. They're not going to do anything with him with this, because he pretty much said that was a bad call. And that was one of the rules for being that minority owner, is he could not say anything bad about the referee. Now, he didn't say anything like, oh, they're in on the fix or whatever, but he did say something, and the NFL came back and pretty much slapped him on the wrist. This is how that's going to be. These rules that they came up with for Tom Brady, they're going to enforce them, but they're going to have to be so bad that they're going to have to do something, because the public is going to make them do something. That is the only way something happens. Anyway, I was kind of about that. I was just kind of like, I'm not shocked, but yeah, it just seemed like they just couldn't get anything going. I mean, you could just tell he was hurt, and the Lions are just a well-oiled machine right now. I don't know what you thought, but that Amon St. Brown, I didn't know that a high school kid, it was a high school kid or a D3 kid in college, did the same deal on Friday night. I think it was a high school kid, did the same thing. And I tell you what, that St. Brown, they said you have to have a pretty strong neck to do that little whatever he did. But I thought that was pretty cool. I thought, damn, that was, so yeah, they just didn't They just didn't come. I mean, you can just tell that there's a lot of injuries, the weather conditions, but it didn't affect Detroit. And, they're just a better team right now. I mean, in the NFC right now.
Yeah, so the celebration was done by it was Saturday. It was a D3 guy.
Okay.
So and he got flagged for it. The referees
Mhm.
flagged him for extra, too much of a celebration. And then was it London? No, it was one for the Saints. Someone else did it, or no, it was Drake London for the Atlanta.
Yeah. Yes,
He
it
did
was.
it, and then you had Amora St. Brown do it. Morris was definitely better, but yeah,
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
it's definitely one of those things where you're like, oh, it's a cool celebration, but let's knock it off. You don't need to be getting injured. Definitely on nice
Yeah.
weather conditions. It was just like if that helmet slid, you're falling on your back or whatever. But it was a cool celebration. I just think the thing with Detroit right now is, because we got to watch that game being an afternoon game. You got to kind of focus on it a little bit more than a noon game when there's 7 other games going on. Is their defense puts them in good situations, because when you look at the stat line, it's hard to believe that Detroit won this game. And why I say that is because Jared Goff only had 145 throwing or passing yards, and David Montgomery had 73 rushing yards, and Jahmyr Gibbs had 65, and you got Amara St. Brown got 56 catches. It's not like 200 yards. I mean, Jaden Reed had 113 yards on the Packers side, and you're like, okay, I could see that. Jordan Love had 273 yards passing. But what happens is Detroit's defense puts them in good situations with their special teams and things like that, where they don't have to go the whole field to score touchdowns. And they just chip at you. And that's what happens when you got a 1-2 attack like David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. You can do this where it doesn't seem like you're just getting, but that offensive line is just laying on top of the defense and just keeps digging at them. And by the end of the game, you don't, and this is why these teams have so hard of beat, the next week winning against the Lions, because they just slowly kill you.
They just beat the hell out of you.
Yeah, it's like they kill you by a thousand like needles or whatever it's the saying
Right.
is. But
Right.
and I think what we saw in this Packers game too is if Jordan Love isn't fully healthy, then go back to the other backup, because you still won with him. So, I mean, I know there was that play right at that, almost at the end of half, where he throws a deep ball and he catches it, but it was like, you got to get up to the line, and he didn't even run up there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he couldn't get. There was no way in hell he was getting up. I mean, I think when he caught it was like, or when he went down, it was like 5 seconds ago, and then I was go, "There's no way he's getting up there. There is no way in hell," and he just stopped.
Yeah, it's just one of these things where it's, if you're not, then go back and maybe you see that happen. Maybe you see let them, because you got a playoff team in Green Bay right now. You still, I mean, with your record, but you got to stay competitive. I mean, don't get me wrong, because you got the Vikings got to win this weekend as well. So, I mean, when you talk about the NFC North and what the NFC has, the Eagles are fighting for a playoff or a wild card position. So are the Vikings and Packers. Those are your 3 teams already naming and out by a stretch of your wild card.
Right.
I mean, so and only 2 go.
And
so,
the Eagles are coming on now too.
Yep. And so that's what I'm saying is, like, the Packers, I understand keep putting Love out there, but I mean, at the same time, like, what gives you a better chance to win the game? Is a half Love, or is it this Willis? So I definitely think that this game, it was a first Lions game outside. I thought that was a cool stat. We're in week 8 or 9, but like they hadn't been outside yet, and then they go outside in these weather conditions that are awful, and they just play well. I mean, Campbell's got a good little situation there, but they built it from the ground up. And that's what sometimes these teams in the NFL don't want to do anymore. I mean, I was yesterday driving back to Illinois to do some things and listening to 670 about the Bears and stuff. And it's like, you guys you're building it from ground up. Relax. And the problem, though, is they're trying to compare themselves to the Vikings, the Green Bay, and Detroit. And it's like, you're not there yet. You're not there. So, but this was a good game. I mean, it's definitely an NFC North game. When what I mean by that, it was the running attack, hard hitting. It just was a grind.
You had it all. Yeah. Yep. You had it all.
Well, that moves us to one of the multiple overtime games. The third must-watch game was the Rams versus Seahawks in this game. What did you think about this game?
Oh, I liked it. The offense, I mean, it just seemed like Stafford, that team is still totally different. I mean, don't give me wrong, Nakua, the punch that he threw, which I don't know if that was really technically a punch. He just kind of swung around, and he got ejected. That Rams team, it totally changed on that play there. But the Seahawks, they came out, they hooked up Smith in the second quarter, hooked up with Tyler Lockett. Made it 6-3. It just seemed like it was going back and forth. It was kind of a boring first half, but in the second half, boy, they just kind of both teams kind of took it on. Rams go down the field. Stafford looked up with Robinson, made it 13-10, or to make it 13-13, I think. Or no, the Seahawks had it 13-13. Geno Smith gets picked off the end zone, and it ended up being the pick six, which ended up being the longest pick six, or not pick six, but longest interception this year, which I thought the other team, when the Seattle had earlier in the year, it was longer, but this one was just a little bit longer. And then the Seahawks, they blocked a punt, and they get it to 2020. Smith throws it. It just seemed like Seattle kept trying to give him the game. He threw an interception. They get the ball back, and the Rams couldn't move the ball hardly at all either in the fourth quarter. And then Smith get the ball, and then he threw another interception. And then, they got into overtime, and the Rams get the ball. They go down the field, and Stafford to Robinson, one-handed catch, and for the win in overtime. It was just like, it was actually a pretty good game.
Yeah, I think this game, when you look at it, was, you can see that Seattle's definitely missing DK because Jackson Smith-Njigba has 7 catches for 180 yards, 2 touchdowns. Really glad that I have him on my fantasy team for that one. But, I mean, when you look at the Rams on the other side of it, right, like, if you don't get that pick six, this is a whole different game. And I'm going to say right this, we found out as watching this game that we want pick sixes because pick sixes means that there's free 6 wings at Applebee's, and my wife is always happy to go for some free wings, and I'll take that all day.
Nice.
When you look at this game, I mean, when you have Puka going out, it kind of reminded me of the old Rams where, I mean, Cooper Kupp has 11 catches for 104 yards. That was their main target. I mean, luckily they got this Demarcus Robinson that can help as well. But like otherwise, outside of those two, you need Puka in there. And when I thought Puka went out, or when they ejected him, it was one of these things where it was like, okay, they're done. Seahawks are going to take over. And then Geno, these 3 interceptions were wild. He's had interceptions in the past, don't get me wrong, but these 3 interceptions were just erratical. They were just badly thrown balls, and it was like I saw a couple weeks ago, he was on the sideline complaining, and it's like, but you're the one that's causing some of this. Like, it's just they kept putting themselves in behind the sticks with false starts and things like that. It was a sloppy game by the Seahawks, and for them to even go into overtime was kind of surprising. But you got to get more people involved. I mean, Tyler Lockett, and I know he's kind of getting up there in age a little bit, but I mean, only 3 catches. I mean,
he's not even part of the. It don't seem like he's part of the offense.
Well, he just needs to be way more involved, and because when you have Jackson Smith, why Jackson Smith-Njigba has this type of game is because you ran the ball for 25 carries for 83 yards. That's not productive. It needs to be better. So to open up the running attack, it opens up the passing attack, right? Well, when they're like, hey, they ain't got much of a passing attack, we'll just stack the box. That's how Jackson Smith-Njigba gets these big plays to get these touchdowns, was because they were filling the box. But yes, this game was who can control the division. The Rams won. We both saw that happening. Unfortunately, not by or not winning by until overtime. But it was one of these things where now that they won this game, I see this being a Rams kind of led division going forward.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, JSN, Jackson Smith-Njigba, he could have had 170 yards of receiving, and not for a couple penalties that got called back. So I mean, he had because he had a standout game. He had a standout game this week, and I thought, maybe that going forward, because who knows what you're going to get with Metcalf. I mean, that knee still could be it'll bother him the rest of the year. So you may have to start to go with JSN, and start getting him the ball a little bit more often. But they've got to get that running attack going. Kenneth Walker is too good of a player. You got him and Charbonnet in the backfield, man. They've got to use them like Detroit does. Just use them as a 1-2 punch. They've got to get that going. I mean, they can't lean on Geno Smith all the time. And and Smith, they're two interceptions. One was at the 5. I mean, you can't. I mean, you get down that close, you got to punch it or at least get a field goal out of it.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think, and they have a bye coming up, so maybe that gives a little bit more time for DK to get back for Seattle. Because this next week they're on a bye, so that'll open it up a little bit. But that was a 3 must-watch games. Let me real quick go through the rest of the NFL and give the results this week. We start with the Cowboys and Falcons. Falcons win 27-21 against the Cowboys. The Bills beat the Dolphins 30-27. The Bengals beat up on the Raiders 41-24. Chargers win 27-10. Titans win in an overtime game, second of the other 2 overtime games, 20-17 against the Patriots. Commanders beat the Giants 27-22. Panthers beat the Saints 23-22 at the end. You had the Eagles beating the Jaguars 28-23. The Cardinals beat the Bears 29-9. Then the Vikings beat the Colts 21-13 for Sunday Night Football. And on Monday Night Football, the third overtime game was the Chiefs winning 30-24 against the Buccaneers. What did you think about this weekend?
Yeah, I thought the Eagle Saquon Barkley, I think, was the topper of the weekend. His move where he had the guy miss the tackle, does a spin move, and then hurls the third guy backwards. You just don't see that stuff. I'll tell you what, that's got to be the play of the year as of right now, halfway through the season. That has got to be. I mean, and then you got Devontae Smith making that heck of a catch in the end zone. It's just like, well, if you think you could do one thing, I'll one up you. I thought that was pretty sweet, both of them. The Chris Olave injury, ooh. Now there's talk that Michael Thomas was calling out Derek Carr, that maybe they got to get him out of it, which there's a lot more to do with it. I think Michael Thomas is kind of mad because nobody has looked at him this year. But that over the middle and the flag slide, I thought, oh my God, that didn't look good. And he got carted off. You had now Derek Carr has lost to 31 different teams. I seen the stat on Sunday. He has now lost to 31 different teams in the National Football League. Well, there's only 32, so that tells you. So you had the Tyler Bass 61-yard field goal for the win as the Bills pull that on off against the Dolphins. And then the Drake May, this was another one too. They're trying to do like a Hail Mary, but not really because they're farther down the field. But he's scrambling for at least 10 seconds. It ended up being like 11.3 seconds, and found a receiver in the end zone for a touchdown that made him go to overtime, which they ended up losing. But I thought that play there, I think New England might have their quarterback, but I don't know if they got the coaching staff to help them. Kind of like in Chicago.
Yeah, I think the biggest conversation this weekend takeaway was every team that tied it in fourth quarter to go into overtime lost. And there's a lot of conversations about why not going for 2. And it could be a whole different weekend, because if every team would have went for 2, you might not have won. And you'd be like, well, why didn't you go for 2 and just go into overtime? It just was weird that every one of them, I mean, the Patriots have a last second one that, like you said, the Drake May, he throws it up, catches it. I thought it was a lot of luck. I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't.
Yeah, I do too.
Great talent to get to evade as long as he did. But the way he threw it up, it was like, well, I got to get it up there, because if I get sacked, the game's over anyways. So it was a luck, but then they go into overtime, they lose. Okay. Yeah. And then you go down to the Rams and Seahawks. The Seahawks go down in the fourth quarter, score a touchdown, tie it up. They go into overtime. They actually got the ball first and didn't score. And then the Rams go down there and throw it, because all they had to do was kick a field goal and instead Stafford throws this deep bomb, and it's a nice one-handed catch. And then you look at last night, Monday night, the Buccaneers go down, score a touchdown to tie the game. It's like, okay, instead of going for 2, they go for 1. And as soon as the coin toss was up in the air and it got on the Chiefs side, you saw Baker Mayfield be like, damn.
Yeah. He's like, oh, fuck, I'm done. Yeah, we're done. The game's over.
It was just where every team did it. I mean, you're looking at like, it was definitely a conversation this weekend. When you look back at the Eagles, yes, they have nice catches and it's great, but they let the Jaguars back in this game.
Yeah. Well,
in the second half.
Yeah, that Sirianni just I think his ego overmatches how the game is going on. And I think he just tries to be too cute, or he just thinks, well, I'm just smarter than everybody else.
See,
Well, but
I think actually I'm the opposite on this one. I think Sirianni is an old school coach. And what I mean by that is the analytics sometimes say to do something, and he does the opposite based on feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So we're giving him shit for saying, hey, don't go based on your feelings. Don't be too cute. But at the same time, when we see coaches that do everything analytically, we're like, well, it's analytics are taking over too much football. And it's like, well, what do you want? I know you want someone in the middle, but we just got Belichick out of the league because we didn't like how he did things. Well, he did everything old school. So he didn't care about the analytics. And that's what I think Sirianni is when he goes for these 2-point conversions or when the fans are booing. It's like, your team is winning. They're doing better than they have been in the beginning of the year. Relax. But that's Philadelphia for you. You need to put on a show for them because they will let you know if you're not. So, but
I agree. And I agree with the deal with last night, not going for it. So okay, so you get it. You get the 2-point conversion. That still gives 30 seconds to Mahomes. Now, don't get me wrong, he didn't do anything, but ask Buffalo how that worked out for him in a playoff game. It's just, I think when they called that timeout, I think when I don't know I can't remember the coach's name is for Tampa Bay, he calls that timeout. That was a dumb timeout. You run even the commentator, even Troy Aikman said, you got to run the clock down a little bit more. Then, if you need to use that timeout, then use it. But you give them way too much time, which luckily it didn't come back to bite them in the butt. But it's still the idea that you don't give him that much time. And I think you got to go. And then weather conditions last night, I think you got to go for the 2. I think you're a 4-4 team. Go for it, man. You're 2 games behind or 3 games behind because Atlanta won. You're that far behind on Atlanta for the division. The only way you're going to playoffs is if you win the division. I think you got to go for it. You got to go for the 2-point conversion.
Well, and I think it's a lot easier said than done now because we know what happened. But I definitely agree. Right. When you see Pat Mahomes on the other side, you got to win the coin toss. Well, I would rather take that 30 seconds and try to rely on my defense. Yes, do I understand that he did it in 17 seconds against the Buffalo Bills that one year, whatever? Right. They didn't have any timeouts at the time. The Chiefs did not. So, I mean, why not just and if you don't get the 2-point conversion, okay, the game's over anyways. Right? Yep. Like, I definitely agree. I think it's a lot easier said than done now because we know what the result was. But at the same time, like, if I'm a coach in the NFL and I'm playing against the Chiefs and we tie it up in the last 30 seconds, I got to go for 2 because I know that other team, if they get a chance to get the ball back, they're going to win. They're going to win. So, but that was this week for the NFL Sunday/Monday of Week 9. Big today, obviously, with Election Day, but it's also trade deadline day. So today we saw some teams benefit from it. We saw which ones are buyers and sellers. We saw Lattimore from the Saints going to the Commanders. Now, he's kind of been on and off this year because of a hamstring injury, but that really will help up the Commanders. Williams and Preston Smith. So Williams from the Jets and Preston Smith from Green Bay are going to the Steelers. Zadarius Smith from the Cleveland Browns is going to the Lions. Jonathan Mingo from the Carolina Panthers is going to the Cowboys. And one interesting fact was that Anthony Richardson and DK Metcalf were off limits, even though teams were calling about it. What do you think about the trade deadline this week?
Yeah, I don't know. The Cowboys getting Jonathan Mingo. You don't. Yeah, you do. I don't. You need a running back. You don't need. I think you have Tolbert. You have Tolbert and CeeDee Lamb, and Dak's going to be out for. Looks like what I've seen on reports. He's going to be out for. He's going to the IR, so he's going to be out at least 4 games. You're 3-5. I don't see you in that strong division with Philadelphia and Washington. I don't see you making the playoffs. You're deep. I mean, I know they're going to get some of their defensive help back, but I think 9 to 10 wins in the NFC is make you the playoffs. You're 3-5, so that means you got to go 7-2 the rest of the way, or 6-3. I don't see that happening from Dallas. I think you needed a running back. You got to go after. I think if there was a running back out there, you got to go after and get it. I mean, now now you got Washington getting Lattimore. Hell, that's another. They get more defense. Oh boy, I mean and then Detroit picks up the wide receiver. Well, you've got 7 wide receivers now. What do you need another one for? I think that Detroit probably should have went after Max Crosby or the DN Myles Garrett from Cleveland, because Cleveland's not going anywhere.
So hold on. Lions got Zadarius Smith. He's a DN from Cleveland.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that'll help. That'll help. Apparently, Myles Garrett was a little probably too much rich for their blood for that one. So I mean, that helps. So I mean, that's even. I mean, I don't know. There's some of these players, I think they were just trying to get. I think some of these teams were trying to get draft picks, probably like the Jets. The Jets wanted to get rid of some of their players so they can get some more draft picks, because they're not going anywhere neither. So, and I heard there was a rumor that Cortland Sutton was on the trading block as well for Denver, but nobody came in with a strong offer, because Denver does need some draft picks, because they have no draft picks because they went after Russell Wilson. So they're going to need some, because I think that defense needs a little more help.
Yeah, I mean, I think these trades are good for every team. And what I mean by that is Jonathan Mingo to the Cowboys. I understand what you're saying, but this year's over. I mean, this year's over already, because Zeke doesn't even make this travel this weekend because he wasn't showing up for meetings. And how many years was Zeke in the Dallas where he's been in this situation and never heard of anything like this happening?
Yeah, that's because they were winning.
It's a dumpster fire, right? So, but I think it's still a good trade for the Cowboys. And here's why. Is because Jonathan Mingo was a 2nd-round draft pick. Okay. He's played pretty well so far. They gave him a 4th-round draft pick. So in all numbers right there, that's a good trade for them, right? Because he is the future of their wide receiver situation. Mm-hmm. But when you look at this, it just, like, all these teams, like Zadarius Smith going to the Lions, boom. They're not rebuilding, they're reloading. And Williams and Preston Smith going to the Steelers. That's showing that they're contenders. They want to, with Russell Wilson, they think that they can go to the playoffs, if not farther, and do more. Lattimore to the Commanders. I kind of want to wait to see what that helps. But their head coach is a defensive coordinator in mind. So that's what they want. They already have an offensive coordinator that was already a head coach. So he's pretty much running that offense. And then your head coach is running the defense. And you going out and go get this. I thought all these trades were good for these teams. I mean, there was other trades, like the Vikings picked up a left tackle, the Chiefs obviously back, the last week with DeAndre Hopkins and things like that.
When they got Uche, they got which he played a little bit last night. That linebacker from New England, he played a little bit last night too.
Yeah, and I just think these trades are good for these teams. I thought it was going to be a little bit more action-packed today than what we saw. I didn't think I saw that Herbert for the Bears got traded to Bengals because Zach Moss is down, so that he got traded as well. There's other players, but I mean, the Jonathan Mingo, I just see that as, and I watched Pat McAfee today, and I saw this, that they're talking about it. It just doesn't make any sense, because when we get around draft time, draft picks are just like, oh my gosh, we can't give them away, we can't do anything, we can't. And then, like, the trade deadline comes around, and they're like, we'll just throw you a 4th round, we'll throw you a 3rd round, we'll throw you a 2nd round, and it's like, so it's like seasonal when draft picks matter and when they don't. I guess in my mind, and this is maybe why I'm not a GM for the NFL, but I would rather have an experienced player. I know what they can do. I understand that the contract might be more than what a rookie deal will be, but at the same time, I know, like, you're seeing some of these superstars like Davante Adams and even Mike Williams. Yes, he's not been great for the Jets. He's coming off an injury, but we knew what he was in the Chargers. And Keenan Allen to the Bears. Some of these big contracts and / trades are for nothing. And it's like, okay, so a 4th round pick for Davante Adams, I'd take Davante Adams all day, every day than that. Like, so it's funny how the trades can, or how the draft picks at one point can matter, but then when it comes around trade deadline, it just doesn't matter anymore.
Right. It just, I mean, it was just that I think were they doing it because of the need, or just to build up draft picks? Was some of these teams doing the trades because of what they need? Like, the contenders went after what they needed for, and then the other teams that did the picking up players is maybe just to fill up draft picks.
Yeah, and that's what you see in every sport, right? You have the contenders and pretenders, and the sellers and the buyers and things like that. So that's what this was you saw some of these teams being like, okay, we're not contenders. We're sellers, and we're going to sell off, and we're going to try to rebuild and stuff like that. So, but that leads us into this week. We have a Thursday night football game between the Ravens and the Bengals. So the Bengals will have to get this win as a divisional. And with the offense, the way that the Baltimore's playing right now, I will say, I mean, the Bengals are going to have to play damn near perfect. Joey Burrows is going to have to be really well in this game because this Ravens team is playing way too good of ball right now.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Yeah, the only thing they'll have advantage on is that Baltimore will have to go on the road. I mean, and Cincinnati will be at home. So usually the home team has the bigger advantage on a Thursday night, and I think they'll need every bit of it because that offense of Baltimore's is pretty good.
Yeah, so it's actually in Baltimore this week.
Oh, is it actionable?
Yeah.
Oh, that's not good there.
Yeah, that's where I thought like the Bengals to even compete in this game, they're going to have to play damn near perfect. I mean, and this team hasn't really shown. I mean, yes, they had a good game this past week, but like I don't know, it's just they're so hit or miss this year, and there's just a lot with them. But
gotcha.
And then there is no top 10 teams or top 25 teams playing Thursday or Friday night this week. So the bigger games we will talk about on Saturday when we drop the podcast. But before we get out of here today, I wanted to ask you, we're halfway through the season. Who do you think is the MVP right now and why?
I think it's got to be Lamar's to lose. I mean, that offense, the way he played against Denver last week, he's got it going right now. I think he's going to be a back-to-back one. I mean, the stats are proving it. He's the guy right now. I mean, he's hot right now. I mean, they've got him, passing, running. I mean, not so much running, but they still do the running, but I think Derrick Henry, we all, when you see the trade happen for Henry, or they sign Henry, that, you already got a running quarterback. Why and I think he's only made him better. So, I mean, I think that's, I also think Josh Allen could sneak in there. He had a pretty good game against Miami last week. You still got Patrick Mahomes. He didn't miss a beat. That team's 8-0 right now. And he didn't. I mean, his stats don't stand out. That's what's going to hold him back, is his stats just doesn't. But his team is playing better. So, I mean, he might be the most valuable player to his team, but this award goes to the most valuable player in the league. So I just think it's Lamar's to lose.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, so MVP usually goes to a quarterback. So when you talk about it, like Derrick Henry, I could see being the offensive player of the year, even though Lamar Jackson is an offensive player and he's going to win the MVP. That never makes sense to me in my head, is like, why don't they win both if they're on the both side of it? But whatever. But yes, I when you look at it, like, I think you've got to go with Lamar because he's having better stats than he did last year. You gave him the MVP last year. You don't have another quarterback that has these numbers this year so far. I mean, Josh Allen, yes, he does, but they're really more about James Cook this year. It's about running the ball. So he's got good stats, but not what Lamar's got. Also, Lamar this year, I think, has stepped up his passing game. Where last year he went by his feet and then throwing the ball when he need to. This year he's got a 68% completion rating. Bringing Zay Flowers is definitely a great player to have, but then bringing on Deontay Johnson, you got the deep ball threat plus the speed. And then when the passing game's just not working, you hand it off to Derrick Henry and you still get the win. I don't know if there's another player this year. I mean, I know a lot of people were putting Jaden Daniels up there already. It was like, no, relax.
He's a rookie, and a lot of times these awards go to people that have done well previously as well. So, yeah, I mean, they put in more than just one good year. And Jaden Daniels has, but I just don't I don't see it as a rookie. Not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Think he'll get the offensive player, or he'll get the rookie of the year, I think, right now. For a quarterback. But when you talk about like the overall, I mean, even if he could have because with his injury, it's also going to put him back a little bit too. He hasn't been having as great of games with the injury. CJ Stroud hasn't taken that step forward this year, and with the injuries they have, I mean, there's a lot that's still into play. But I think if the year ended right now, you have to give it to Lamar.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and his team's playing well. It's his to lose. If he did. He either have to get hurt or, but yeah, his team was just playing unless somebody really steps up. I mean, I can see Josh Allen stepping up. I mean, he's still having a pretty good year as well.
What
But
about?
he's going to have to really.
I got one off the wall. You ready for this one? What about Jared Goff?
Yeah, I don't know. His stats are really going to look good because he don't throw very many incompletions.
Yeah,
but he doesn't. I think he's not a flash. He's not dynamic. It's somebody that sparkles, and I just don't know if. And they're going to say, well, he's got a hell of a support cast with Montse Brown. He's got Jamar Gibbs, David Montgomery, and all that stuff. Sam Laporta. I just don't know if he's got that sparkle, that flash of being an MVP. I just don't. He's just a grinder that just gets the job done.
Yeah, and I think when you look at it, like Jared Goff is probably going to be in the same category as Patrick Mahomes. And what I mean by that is like they win games, but they don't need to do it with multiple assets of their, they don't have to do it with their feet and their arm. They can just really lean on their hand or their arm. I just say that because that's a 7-1 team right now, and these completions. But I just looked at the stats right now, and he actually has a lower completion rating than Lamar Jackson does.
Wow.
Which when you hear about the first half,
yeah, after these last 3 games where they've had more points, or he said, I can't remember what the deal was with completions and points scored or something. It was out. It was just really wild. They've had more points than less completions or something. I don't know what it was, but it was nuts.
Yeah. So, but we want to thank everyone for listening. So this was episode 34, and we'll be moving on to episode 35 on Saturday when we do the college football and the must-watch college football for that. But one last thing I have to. How'd you do on betting this weekend?
Hey, 3-0. Woo! I won on the Rams money line, the Chargers money line, and I was kind of a little bit nervous on this one after the first half, but the Vikings did pull it out and won 21-13. So I was given a 5. Vikings was given a 5 to the Colts. 3-0 after that 0-3. Not very good college football Saturday.
Yeah, I ended up 2-1 on Sunday. I thought the Bears could bounce back. I will not be laying any more money the rest of the year on the Bears. So if I do it, please yell at me. But yes, I ended up 2-1. So a 5-1 over the weekend. But again, like it could be where on Saturday we ended up 1-5. We come back on Sunday and hit a 5-1. So, but we want to thank everyone for listening. We'll be back on Saturday for college football and Sunday for NFL. But if you like what we do, comment, subscribe, and share as much as possible. But we want to thank everyone. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you on Saturday.